may have a environment that has a lot of the same bacteria, but or you have the same environment with a lot of many bacteria. So richness is more like how much you have of this bacteria, and the diversity is how much of different bacteria do you have in this environment. So the more rich and diverse we have, a better environment for microbiome.
Well, welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast. I'm here with Dr. Amaral, and we are going to talk about the uh, feeding of pets that have allergies, some conversation hopefully about pets that have struggle with digestive disease and obesity. So large topics and lots to talk about.
Yeah,
I wonder if we could start, just tell us a little of your background. How did you end up where you are today?
I am veterinarian. I started studying veterinary medicine in 2012, but I always liked nutrition. Actually, before I thought about being a veterinarian, I was into being a nutritionist, like a human nutritionist. But I was born a veterinarian, so I went to veterinary, and but everything that I saw was nutrition, 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 and I started doing a scientific initiation in the beginning of my studies, and I entered the group that I am until today. I started working with nutrition about 2013 or 14 maybe, and I did my master's, and I'm currently uh, on the ending of my PhD.
Best of wishes as you progress through that. Well, let's talk a little bit about allergies and sort of as a pet parent, the person taking care of their pet. How do they really know I've got this allergy problem versus maybe other problems with similar symptoms? What would they look for?
Itching mainly and some lesions in the skin. And actually, skin allergy is one of the most the diseases that takes more of the well-being of the pet and the owner. So the pet starts to not being able to sleep, to play, and to do their normal stuff because they are always itching and scratching themselves. So this is the main thing that the owners observe.
At Allura Pets, our commitment to biotechnological innovations empowers you to craft superior products that redefine pet wellness standards. Whether enhancing nutrient bioavailability, promoting gut health, or boosting immunity, our science-backed solutions give your formulations a competitive edge in the pet market. Trust Allura Pets to deliver scientifically proven ingredients that elevate your portfolio to new heights. Visit us at www.allura.bio/pets to learn more.
What are your recommendations if they decide this? They perhaps go to their veterinarian and decide they have a true allergy. How do you differentiate between like a food allergy and an allergy to environment and those sorts of things? What's needed to look at there?
Well, this is actually the main challenge because many patients don't are only allergic to food. They are allergic to food and to the environment, both of the things. So we have to make a trial. In this trial, we have to first look at the skin and to collect a sample to look at the microscope if he has like something like uh, bacteria or fungus that would make the treatment more difficult, and you have to treat this first. So you treat it if they had it, and then you have to start a trial with the food. So you have to take off the food that he was eating previously and give food that has a novel protein or a hydrolyzed protein because the allergy is known to be caused by protein, which are large molecules. So they do this for 60 days, which is also a challenge because We have to isolate the treatment of the diet, so we have to make him stable before that. And we give this food for 60 days and we observe if they get better. This is the main the actually the only way to know it. There are no blood work, no lab stuff that we can do to diagnose it. And if he gets better, we give the previous food and see if they get worse again.
That must be a bit of a challenge for the client, right? To actually maintain them on that food alone. They can't feed them treats. They can't have a topper. They have to really stay very very defined.
Yeah, what I usually say to people is that if you have an allergic pet, you must want for him to be allergic to food because it is easier to treat. Atopy is not easy to treat. So you have 60 days of a work that is not fun. You have to take a lot of stuff. But if you diagnose it correctly, maybe you could provide a better treatment and an easier treatment for this patient, and he would require less medication over the time, and the owner would expend less money.
Yeah.
So this often convinces them to do it. But I also believe that when you say that he can give anything, like nothing, it, it is worse. Like so maybe when the animal usually eats a lot of treats, I usually negotiate the treat and in order to give things that are not mm, compromise that would not compromise the challenge, the trial challenge, like
Yeah,
like fruits or something like that.
I understand. So if you work through that, let's say you then decide we do have a food allergy. What would you look for in the food that you want to recommend? Now it's going to be a long-term feeding, right? This is going to be the food this pet will be maintained on really for the foreseeable future while the allergy is presenting. So what would be your recommendation for that food?
If we're talking about commercial foods, we have here in Brazil, we have commercial foods with novel proteins. So uh, we have evaluated the main proteins that cause allergy. In the first place, we have chicken, and second place, we have beef, which is something that the majority of the owners, the pet owners, also know. So when we wanted to give a different food, we changed the protein. So there are foods with fish or lamb protein, and there are foods with hydrolyzed protein as well. And this is a thing we can do. When we talk about homemade diets, we often go through the same pattern of giving a novel protein like fish and lamb, things like that.
So, do you have many people that want to make their own foods? That I often, as a nutritionist, I don't recommend that. It's actually something I think it's easy to do that wrong. It's hard to do it right.
When the patient is eating commercial food, commercial dry extruded food, I I advise the owner to maintain it and go through a hypoallergenic diet with novel protein or hydrolyzed protein. But when they want to change for a homemade diet, I could say that I could make a homemade diet if they have the profile to do it, if they are owners that do things right.
Hmm.
But I often start every trial with commercial dry food.
Yeah.
There are some veterinarians that want to start with homemade food, the trial, because some veterinarians believe that the hyperorganic diet doesn't have the same result. But it is difficult because once the animal eats the homemade diet, it is possible that he doesn't want to come back to the dry extruded food.
Yeah.
So the owner has a problem if he doesn't want to give him homemade diet.
Yeah, I understand. On the, I was, I was involved a long time ago with hydrolyzed food, and we had we had this goal of being under 10,000 Daltons as a kind of upper limit for the measurement that we were using to say, okay, these are hydrolyzed. And they were quite hydrolyzed. So, most of the amino acids were significantly lower than 10,000 Daltons. But is that still a recommended kind of upper level for hydrolysis, or what do you recommend?
Here in Brazil, the companies, you can only say that if you call the company and ask for the, the central of information of them. Uh, we have foods there. They say there are up to 5,000, and the remaining under 10,000.
Mm, mm.
So they give us like a percentages, like 99% is under 5,000, and the 1% is under 10,000.
And it's a hard measurement to do. At least we had trouble
Yeah,
as we were developing it. That's not trivial to actually get a complete uh, profile of the length of those proteins. So
yeah,
that makes sense. And of course, you're chopping them up. The likelihood is that they're pretty well, it's pre-digested. That's how you make the hydrolyzed protein.
absolutely. Yeah, it's basically amino acids.
They're probably pretty small.
Yeah, they're basically amino acids.
What do you think? Is there any research out there that would sort of, if you expand from the proteins, like I said, in some ways we have a solution, right? If that pet is having a allergy to a particular food, it is a protein. We know it will be a protein allergy, and so then we just got to get that allergen out of the diet. Hypoallergenic, very nice. Hydrolyzed, very nice. There's almost very good, strong likelihood of a solution. If they're allergic to non-food, you know, environmental things, what do you recommend?
This is a problem for the dermatologist. I'll send them to the dermatologist. Actually, I understand your question because uh, there are some few recommendations that are contradictory about this when the animal or the person has atopy, but we don't have a consensus. Many say that if the dog or the person has atopy, they should either way keep a hypoallergenic diet. But the the answer to this on why, what are the mechanisms, and why we should do that, they are not very clear for me as I researched in my previous researches. I believe, and also there is another thing. Some articles in human medicine say that if we have a person with atopy, especially children, if we keep many things out of their lives, if we keep a hypoallergenic food, a hypoallergenic life, it would make atopy worse. So they are very contradictory about that.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say that the animal should keep a normal diet.
Okay. Now, my question is there a chronology to that? Is it worse if you start early with that, or and maybe helpful if you're very late in this process, or what do you think?
I don't know. Maybe I believe that we should better understand the mechanisms of allergy inactivity and food allergy to understand better. Yeah, we have also some articles that say that maybe we are looking to the same thing, that they are both one disease. Um, and there is a question also that comes every time, and the owner also make this question, is that if you keep a hypoallergenic diet, either the dog being a allergic to food or atopic, if they have an immune system that is compromised, and it is compromised usually in the middle age.
Hmm.
So he has his whole life to eat the novel protein that we are giving to them. Will he become allergic to this novel protein as well?
Yeah. Yeah,
And I don't see this happening. So this is a question that they make a lot, but I don't see this happening. So I don't know
good.
if there is something to do with time or the degree of allergy. I don't know.
No, that's good. That's good to know. Well, as we look at this area, what do you think maybe maybe it's part of your research or others researching, what's the new space that might be discovered that would help us better in understanding and treating this?
I believe we should look at the metabolomics. I'm going to do this in my PhD uh, to understand what are the intermediate metabolites involved in food allergy. We have some things in atopy, but we don't have in food allergy, and also microbiota.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it and see actually if there are different diseases or there are uh, different way different ways of one disease to manifest itself. So we have to look at in the intermediate metabolites, I believe.
Mhm.
This would be the main thing.
Isn't that a difficult project to run because the intermediate metabolites you can get so easily is from blood, right? But the mechanism of action is kind of in the tissue. So I'm not sure those metabolites are so easily measured, and certainly it's a lot more invasive to get them. How would you approach that?
I'm using serum and we go through analysis of metabolomics. Actually, we do the one target metabolomics and we see what are the metabolites that are circulating and not at that much the amount of them. And we try to make some understanding out of this, but it is very difficult. I'm very anxious to, to receive these results.
Well, in some ways, your microbiota connection is got to be through the serum or through, transferred through the blood. You're going to measure serum. So those metabolites that show up there in your analysis, that will be very interesting. I've looked at, like renal toxins that are produced by the bacteria, and then they're transmitted, and so you don't necessarily have to get to the kidney itself. You know that these bad things are being transmitted, or what individual do you have a particular individual metabolite, or is it discovery? So we'll have some allergenic pets over there and some healthy pets, and I just compare the metabolism and the metabolites and look at what's different. How's that study going to run?
They talk more about the sphingolipids that constitutes the skin.
The single lipids.
Yeah, these are the main metabolites they analyze.
Okay.
They constitute the skin and they wanted to see if there are any changes on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be exciting. We'll look forward to see how that proceeds. What do you think? Should we talk a little bit about intestinal disease? Should we jump for a few minutes there?
Sure.
So, one of the things that's always troubling is, again, you have this nutrient responsive component, but maybe the food didn't even cause it, right? So there's sort of this cause versus treatment uh, concern going on. What are your recommendations as someone maybe they present with their pets having a series of digestive issues? What do you kind of walk through with them?
Well, when I see a patient and the owner has the diagnosis of inflammatory bowel disease, I often see that the previous veterinarian, did not make it clear that inflammatory bowel disease, for example, doesn't have a cure. So they many times come for a nutritionist hoping for a cure.
Yeah,
And a resolution of this problem we have with food allergy with gastrointestinal manifestation, but not with inflammatory bowel disease. And it is even worse when uh, they like natural stuff. They don't want to give medication. They only want to treat with diet. It could be something that we should take a time to explain. But uh, I I also I usually take some good time explaining this, and have to explain what is the role of the diet. The role of the diet is to not remove medication. Medication he will need like forever, and he will always relapse from the disease. Uh, what diet can do is to increase the time between relapses and the severity of the relapses, and maybe the dosage of the medication and the need for more medication over the time. Uh, they usually get upset with this information, but I believe,
I'm sorry.
uh, but I believe that good diet could work on that, but not the cure.
Yeah.
I believe that in the future, when we understand better dysbiosis, we can reach for better results, like not having inflammatory bowel disease. But we know this is a disease from the immune system, so it is difficult to treat that.
Now you talked about dysbiosis. Let's discuss that because clearly these pets often have a real breakdown of their microbiota associated with the disease. I think that's been pretty well shown. So what's a way of attacking that component? Would you recommend, sort of the prebiotic, postbiotic?
We have so many things, right? We have even the fecal microbiota transplantation. uh, I believe that if we want a quick result in the future, we may go for fecal microbiota transplantation. However, this is more invasive therapy. I don't know if this will become something that we do in a day-to-day
Yeah.
in seeing patients. This is more difficult, but I believe that once we get to know what the prebiotics and postbiotics and probiotics do for effect and study in a controlled state with these animals, we might have a better uh, possibility of treatment that is not fecal microbiota transplantation. And it is something that we could put in the food, like prebiotics.
Well, it's always nice to be able to do that, and yet like you said, we have not solved this problem in any way. I think we're looking at some new aspects of it, and I do like Dr. Tsiolkovsky's, just leading the way in this. And he would talk about that dysbiosis that they've measured and observed, and I believe that's real. And he's certainly an excellent research scientist. I always read what he writes with
I
interest.
understand.
The reality, of course, is it's not just what's there; it's what they're doing.
Yeah,
So you can get changes in the response with minimal changes in the actual microbiota, and so it's very complicated.
yeah. Actually, this one's one of the comments of a revisor that read my article that I'm trying to publish for my master's. I worked with IBD dogs and I gave them beta glucan
Yes,
and I evaluated the microbiota. I didn't run the dysbiosis index, but I evaluated through Illumina sequencing.
yes,
All my dogs were in the mild stage of the disease, so I believe this was one of the most important things because some articles uh, put animals with severity of disease different. They are different from themselves, the animals between them. Uh, and his question was, uh, do you have any conclusion about that? If we can use beta glucan, this is something that the clinician should give because he wants to see the applicability of that.
right. It's a good question.
Yeah, I loved to answer that. So my answer to them was that uh, we first have to know what the probiotics do in bacteria in a controlled state with animals with the same severity of the disease. But also doesn't mean that if I give this prebiotic, the microbiota will change and the function of the microbiota will change because there are a lot of bacteria.
Yeah, yeah.
So So no, I can give some uh, um, advice on their use yet. This is too soon. This is more basic research, but we are on the way to do that, hopefully.
Well, the beta glucans have interested me in a number of ways because they are, and so the audience will know maybe, but we could just say this is a fiber that is not metabolized or not digested in the small intestine, so it's available for the microbiota, and then specific microbiota grab beta glucans. So if you're looking at a fructooligosaccharide versus a beta glucans, they both bypass through, but different microbiota attack them. So yeah, that's just it's just a background thought to say that's interesting and perhaps very valuable. Um, more research needed is always the common statement.
This is how we end every article we write. More research is needed.
Yeah.
But I saw them beta glucan change.
You did it did change the microbiota.
It is changed in a favorable way.
So how define favorable? You said you didn't do a dysbiosis index. What move that you said, oh, I like that. That's good.
The thing is that we've evaluated the diversity indexes, so the diversity index is improved. We have definition of one of the definitions of dysbiosis is the reduction of richness and diversity. So these were improved.
So help the audience with this. Help them understand the difference between richness and diversity when speaking of microbiota.
So I usually explain this for my students. I say that you may have a environment that has a lot of the same bacteria, but or you have the same environment with a lot of many bacteria. So richness is more like how much you have of these bacteria, and the diversity is how much of different bacteria do you have in this environment. So the more rich and diverse we have, a better environment for microbiota.
Diversity, I think, is easily understood. It's sort of like counting the number of microbes present, and the more of them you've got, the more diverse it is. Is that kind of fair?
Yeah, yeah.
But richness still kind of harder to understand because it's saying you have you can have increasing richness and not change increased bacterial number. Is that correct?
Uh,
So say for example, you had a certain number of genera there, you could change richness by increasing a common amount throughout all of them, rather than you'd have a high diversity if one genera was 90% and 1,000 genera were at 0.1% or whatever that would be the math.
oh yeah,
Very rich, right? It'd be very diverse, but not very rich. Richness would be
yeah,
collapsing it so you see that spread out. Is that a good thought?
yeah.
And so you would like, and you would hope that while adding the beta glucan, you would enhance both richness and diversity. So a good complementation, maybe another word, where all these bacteria seem to be living in an ecosystem that would benefit the pet.
Yeah, and one of the things that I forgot to say is that we did a placebo group, and in the placebo group, the animals under the time they were getting worse.
Mm.
So we observed that comparatively they were. I believe not that I believe, but
The data would show, is that what you, rather than I believe,
yeah, yeah. But I see studies that say that relapse times often occur within each 6 months. So I believe that if we do not continue to give something to feed this microbiota that are not stable, they will get worse all over the time.
yeah.
So maybe this is the effect of giving something to feed them itself, you know.
Did you have any external kind of outcome sort of responses, like more dissatisfaction from the people watching the pets, or more diarrhea episodes, or any measurements like that? in your study?
The dogs should maintain their mild stage of disease, which was really difficult during 60 days. Uh, but one of the things that I noticed, and this wasn't a variable that we put in the article, but we observed that dogs remain without relapsing their disease for 6 months or 6 or 7 months. I have one patient that he was like the example of all. He took the beta glucan for 60 days and he remained stable for 6 months.
Hmm.
After 6 months, the owner reached out to me and said, "He's worse again. Can I give it again?" And
Yeah,
I say, "Of course."
yeah,
I sent
yeah.
the recipe, and he improved.
That's a safe recommendation, right? You have a patient who is having success. You don't have to proclaim it's normative. You just have to say, please continue that. Can I
Yeah,
supply the beta glucan?
yeah, he was a success.
Yeah, that's great.
It was amazing, and he was like very uh strict in the clock. Like every 6 months, he would get worse, and he took for 60 days and 6 months good, and then again.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
84 million times a day, pets eat meals with ingredients from Trow Nutrition. We bring together the science of ingredients, nutrition, and blending to unleash possibilities for pet food brands. Premixes are just the start. Turn to Trow for higher inclusion ingredients too, like proteins and carbohydrates, and highly sensitive ingredients like probiotics. With our palatants and base blends, you can feel confident about what comes in our bags and goes in yours. Learn more at TrowNutritionPets.com.
So what we're talking about is this idea of trying to optimize the nutrition we feed, and with the focus for a little bit here about the microbiota. Your work showed that you can change the richness and diversity, which are associated with health, not necessarily completely causative for health or the other way, but it's a good thing. And I wonder if you just sort of look out a little bit and try and think with me, how do we how do we feed this whole system? Not just the host as 30 years ago I only thought about but to host in all of the microbiota together. What do we do
I see that we have to do things that will work for microbiota, and aim
strategically?
strategically on the microbiota that we want to fit. So I hope that in the future we might see a consensus about which prebiotics and probiotics we give, and we have like a certain consensus about dosages and times. And I believe that in the future we might have some supplements or food that already incorporates those prebiotics or postbiotics. I think the future might be the postbiotics itself,
Yeah.
and in order to treat them.
No, that sounds great, and I think there is a real rich area, not to be confused with bacterial richness, I say with a smile, but a real area where much can be learned and much advanced for nutrition. So,
Yeah.
but we have a few minutes left, and I wonder if we might just talk a little bit about obesity. It's such a large problem for pets, and I know you're interested in that. How do you look at, treating a pet, and what foods might you be uh, recommending for someone who, pet's kind of obviously too fat?
Actually, they should go through a weight loss program. This is the most difficult stuff. I usually say to my students that we have obesity in everywhere, and still people don't know how to treat it. Because if they know how to treat it, we wouldn't have that much people and dogs with obesity. So we should actually understand the routine of the owner. I always say too that the consultation of this pet shouldn't be quick, and we should look at all of the things that he eats in 24 hours, not just the drive-through the diet or the homemade diets within the scheduled time of lunch and dinner. So we have to provide them a food that will make them would not make them that hungry. So with a lots of fiber and low energy and high protein and moderate fats. So he would keep his muscle mass,
Yeah.
especially in those that are getting older.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So in some ways, you're saying we're trying to restrict energy, but we're in the in the same time trying to provide all the protein that's still needed. So as that system moves, the protein, becomes a more important part. What about the rate of weight loss? That we all want instant gratification. I'd like to be my ideal body weight tomorrow, and I don't think that's happening. What do you think about for?
Well, I am a soft veterinarian. I am so empathetic with patients. I did a lot of diets in my life, but I see there are recommendations that said that dogs should lose between 1 and 2% per week, and cats 0.5 to 1% per week. I see when in my patients that dogs usually are uh, under the 0.5%. And there are recommendations to reduce food when they are under 1%. And I usually don't do that. Actually, this is one of the things that I think we should discuss about. Who thought about this 1% to 2%? Who thinks that this is the best thing? I believe that when we are more um, calm in relation to that, and we keep in 0.5%, they reach their ideal target, and the owner is more um, is more pleasant, and he's more willing to continue to do the weight loss program, so we don't lose this patient, yeah, over time. Like they don't give up.
Yes.
So I often keep them, if they are like 0.5%, I just leave it that way and see him
Sure.
in 2 months.
Okay. Well, that makes sense to me. What do you recommend for people who are interested in making a weight loss program for their pets? What would you walk them through the process that might be valuable for them?
Calm. Don't be in a hurry. This process should take a long time. And they usually question the time that would take for the pets to reach their target weight. And I calculated, and I also add 2 more months ahead, so they won't be like anxious or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I believe the main thing is calm and do not give up, and trust that the veterinarian know what he's doing. And I believe also that he shouldn't be afraid to tell their difficulties to the veterinarian. I think many of them avoid doing that because they think they are going to um, the veterinarian is going to be mad and saying stuff, which is something that I don't think the veterinarian should do.
Yeah.
I believe that they should create this relationship with the veterinarian and tell all the truth, all the things they're doing.
No, that's very helpful.
Benefits consumers want, partnerships you need. Schooler is your all in one partner for an innovative pet food supply. With an expansive portfolio and global access, we can source and deliver in demand ingredients year round. Schooler provides access to ingredients that are animal and marine ingredients, nutrient rich, clean label, plant based, freeze dried, sustainable, MSC and Marin Trust certified, and more. That means you can offer on trend products consumers want without disrupting production. Learn about the benefits of working with Schooler. Visit schooler.com/pet. That's SCOULAR.com/pet.
Well, I've enjoyed talking about all these nutritional aspects with you. I have something I always like to do. I hope you will do with me. I wonder if you look out at your experience working with people in your space and just tell me what you felt like you looked for and would wish for in a person that you would either want to be on their team or be on a team you were leading. What attributes would they have?
Passion for nutrition.
Okay.
We live and breathe nutrition 24 hours a day, but like very much eager to learn I think we have to read a lot, and we do have a mind uh, directed toward research. So I believe we should read a lot to know the gaps in scientific literature.
Well, Dr. Morrow, I've enjoyed speaking with you, and maybe we'll talk again if we kind of work through this. I'd love to hear how your research continues, and maybe as that beta glucan finally comes out in presentations, we can do a deeper dive into that sometime. I'd enjoy that. So, Pet Food Science, bye for now.